going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. With just a few weeks left of Phase 1 in Season of Discovery, I figured it's a great time to make our final DPS tier list so you guys could see where each class stands moving on into Phase 2. So without further ado, guys, let's dive in. Okay, so getting started, like I said, this is a DPS tier list right now, just because on the right side of our screen, we're looking at the statistics from Warcraft logs in terms of actual raw DPS. That is not going to determine where the class goes on the tier list, right? The tier list is going to be made up of how well that class does, what it can bring to the raid, obviously how much DPS it can do, and why it is valuable, right? So first up on our list here, we have the Druid, right? We have Feral Druid, we have Balanced Druid. Balanced Druid, I am not going to be ranking as a top spec right now. Balanced Druid is definitely more of a B tier, but Feral is definitely doing some respectable damage, and it brings Wild Strikes and Rebirth. So for me, Feral Druid is going to be ranked at A. If I was ranking Balanced Druid, I would be putting Balanced Druid at the top of just about B tier. So moving on, we have Hunter, right? Hunters have been going through a lot in Season of Discovery. We've had a lot of nerfs left and right on Hunters, but they're still going strong. They're still 4th highest DPS according to Warcraft logs. As you guys can see here, they're right under Feral Druids. So I would put Hunters in A tier, right under Feral Druids. I think this is because Hunters are just doing respectable damage. The problem is mana, but once you get gear and switch over to Marksman, if you're in a guild that's having really fast clear times, Marksman Hunter with gear is going to absolutely pump, and in a lot of cases will out DPS Feral Druid. So Hunter is a solid A tier for me. Next up, we have Mage, right? Mage, what most people are playing in the raid is Fire. You do see some Arcane Mages here and there, but Fire's DPS is just so much better. The AoE potential from Fire Mage is absolutely off the charts. They have the highest AoE out of every DPS class in the game currently. You know, if you do some huge pulls in BFD, you could see mages just blasting over 500 DPS during these AoE pulls. So it's pretty nice. And I think mages are actually in a really good spot moving forward. Let me know what you guys think, but I think Fire Mage is going to be the go-to spec. So if you are an Arcane Mage enjoyer, I think it'll always do well throughout all of these phases, depending on the runes that we get. But Fire, if Fire is doing this well early on, it's going to be pretty hard to top that later on when you start getting more crit and things like that. Fire is just going to keep scaling out of control. So for me, I would rank Mages right under Hunters in the A tier. I think they're extremely solid. Their AoE DPS is not comparable to any other DPS class in the game, and I think they're in a really good spot. Next up, we have our Ret Paladins. Now, Pallies came out strong simply because they had access to Varigan's Fist, which was a really powerful weapon heading into this raid before everyone else was getting gear like that. And Varigan's Fist really did carry them. In the first few weeks of this raid, Pallies were at the top. You couldn't touch a Paladin. But now that other classes are starting to get some BIS pieces, even be full BIS, and Warriors are getting gear, Pallies have actually gone down the list quite a bit here. So for me, I would have to put Ret Pallies in the top of B tier. Their damage is solid. They have a lot of nice burst and utility, but again, we're going off of DPS here, and Pallies against a full BIS Feral, Hunter, or Mage are not going to be able to stack up. They're going to do a lot of respectable damage, and they're definitely still worth bringing to your raid because they make the Akumai fight a hell of a lot easier, but their damage just isn't there anymore now that these other classes are getting a ton of gear. Now, up next here, guys, we have Shadow Priest, right? Shadow Priests are really struggling. I have a Shadow Priest in my raid. He likes to bring his Shadow Priest. He's a Shadow Priest enjoyer, and he does respectable DPS aside from the mana issues, right? So moving on into Nomer, we're going to need to see runes that help priests with mana and things like that, and just help them scale a little bit better. I think once priests are good with mana, they are going to be unstoppable. So I can see them in level 40, you know, phase 2, actually doing quite well, doing a lot of DPS. They already do respectable DPS if played correctly. but they suffer from severe mana issues. So I would say for phase 1, the Shadow Priest is going to be in C tier for me. It's not great. I mean, it's good in the right hands, but again, we're going off the numbers and the numbers just aren't there. As for Rogue, Rogues are really, really strong, right? Rogues have been a top contender for the #1 spot since week 1. They are still going strong. They are right under Warriors in terms of DPS. They are, you know, in the right hands, a Rogue is going to do the most damage in the raid if you don't have a full bis warrior there as well. So Rogues for me belong in S tier. Their damage is just incredible, and they are really good. They are lacking in terms of like AoE damage, right? They don't have Fan of Knives or anything yet, but their single target damage is just off the charts, and I think Rogues deserve the S spot for sure. Let me know what you guys think. Up next, we have Shamans, right? Enhancement and Elemental Shamans. They're kind of in the same boat. We're talking about DPS, right? We're not talking about enhancement tank shamans. We're talking about DPS. They do decent damage, nothing crazy, and balanced druids, as you can see on the right here on Warcraft logs, are putting out a bit more DPS than both DPS shaman specs at the moment. But again, I think that with phase 2 and the level 40 runes, you know, each class I think is going to have quite a bit more runes, maybe 10 more runes, even 12. We don't know yet exactly, but they're going to begin to come online a little bit more. I think we're going to be able to see enhancement shamans start pumping. Maybe if we get some two-handed runes, that would be sick too. And elemental shamans are also going to be pumping as well. But right now, I think shamans deserve a spot right behind paladins in the B tier. Their damage just isn't really there. They make great tanks and great healers, but the damage just isn't there to put them in A or higher. I think they are below paladins in terms of raw damage by quite a bit. But still deserve the B spot because they are viable and you can bring them to raid and play them. Now, next up on the list, one of my personal favorites. Actually, I saved my 2 favorite classes for last. We have Warlocks, right? Warlocks are absolutely pumping with Lake of Fire, Chaos Bolt, and Incinerate. The play feels really good. My Warlock is just so much fun to play. I'm actually leveling a 2nd Warlock right now. I do enjoy the Chaos Bolt, Lake of Fire, Incinerate play style. It's really nice. It's super bursty. I mean, on Gamura, you're hitting like 2,600 Chaos Bolts if you're in full bis, and it's really nice to see those numbers at level 25. It's actually kind of crazy. But in terms of raw damage, I think that Warlocks are going to be at the top of S tier for me. I think that they are above Feral Druids, definitely above Hunters and Mages on most fights. You never run out of mana as long as you have 95 to 100% uptime on Lake of Fire. You are absolutely pumping on Warlock, and I think it is in a really good spot right now moving forward. It would be nice to see if they can make one of the other specs viable for DPS in one of these upcoming phases so that you don't have to just play Destruction the entire time. But we'll have to wait and see about that. So for me, Warlocks are in A tier above everything else in that tier. I think they're absolutely amazing. I want to know what you guys think. I might be a little bit biased because Warlock is one of my favorite classes, but my lock is a lot of fun. I have 99 parses almost across the board, and I'm having an absolute blast with it. Next up, though, we have Warrior, right? Warrior surprised everyone, kind of. But if you go back to before Season of Discovery launched, on the podcast with me, Crix, and Sarth, we decided that Warriors were going to be S tier. Now, they might not have been S tier in the beginning, but now that they've got some gear, they are untouchable. Right? Warriors are absolutely untouchable. They are higher DPS than Rogues, Ferals, Hunters, Locks, Mages. You don't have mana. As long as you have gear, whether you're using the two-handed spec or the dual-wielding spec with the dagger, you are absolutely pumping. You are doing massive amount of damage, and it's a lot of fun to play. The only thing we got to worry about here is that if you look on the side, this statistics here, the DPS statistics, this is really starting to look like Vanilla WoW with Warriors, Rogues, and Ferals and Hunters at the top. Yet again, I was talking about this in my other video, but we're going to have to wait and see. So maybe some of these runes could help out the casters a little bit. And you know, kind of, I just feel like Warrior is going to be in that #1 spot all through Season of Discovery. They just scale out of control in Classic WoW. And it shows in every version of the game. Once they get some gear, they are just an unstoppable force, and you know, it's part of the playstyle. It's really rough in the beginning. The first 2 weeks of the raid, we had 2 warriors in our raid, and it was making it really hard for us to kill Kelris and Akamai and stuff like that. But as we got gear, warriors are they're just incredible. So Let me know what you guys think about that. But this would be my tier list, right? We have Warrior, Rogue in S tier, Warlock, Feral Druid, Hunter, and Mage in A tier, Ret Paladins, Balanced Druids, Enhancement, and Elemental Shamans in B tier, and then Shadow Priests sitting by themselves in C tier. But I do think that's going to change next phase. But anyways, guys, that's all I've got for you today. I wanted to make this since we're coming to the end of phase 1, I'm excited for phase 2. Let me know if you guys are excited as well. But if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next time I post a video. And if you want to hang out with me live, I do stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/hammerdance. I'll drop a link to that in the description below this video. And if you guys want to join an awesome Discord community full of like-minded people who all enjoy geeking out over Season of Discovery and Classic WoW in general, then I'll drop a link to that in the description as well. We will welcome you with open arms. But anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I'll see you all in the next one.